At the end of the day, I'm here to help entrepreneurs design brands that guide them to seven-figure success. What is shaking, everybody? Welcome to another Brand Doctor live stream. I am your host, Henry Kaminski Jr., aka the Brand Doctor, and we are going to dive in today and talk about a very serious topic that is costing, in my opinion, hundreds of thousands of dollars of hard-earned money that industry influencers work hard for, yet they make this common mistake, and we need to get our handle around this because it is really going to hold you back from getting to where you want to be. And so when I was putting together this episode, I wanted to bring in a guest, a very special guest, somebody that I really look up to and admire and really appreciate. I actually met him in Chris Doe's pro group, that monthly, group coaching program. And Bob was one of these guys that stood out right away as an experienced creative that has worked on some huge projects. I mean, stuff that you would see on the day to day and be like, oh yeah, Bob did that. So I take a lot of what he said over the months that I've known Bob and practiced it, and I saw some amazing results. And when I was putting together again the show, Bob reached out and Bob was like, this is a great topic. And I was like, dude, you know what? And I think you should come on the show and share your experience with everybody, because it's how you 5x'd your business. And so he was more than happy to do that. So without further ado, I want to introduce my man, Bob Boniall, to the show. Bob, how we doing, buddy?
So glad to be here, Henry. What a privilege it is to be sharing space with the Brand Doctor. You've been killing it with these series. I love your streams, man. They're always so high value. They're both tactical and strategic. I mean, you are really drilling down to the high value stuff that people need, right? Like the stuff that you're putting out there. This is tangible, difference-making tactics.
I appreciate that.
I couldn't be happier to be here with you,
Bob. I appreciate that, and it's taken a while for me to really dial into this. I feel like I kind of took a different direction, when COVID hit. And I sort of got stuck in this, even though that content was valuable, it was pointed towards a different audience. And what happened was I got I'm just going to say it, maybe I got a little too comfortable in talking about all of that stuff. And I realized months later that, Henry, you're talking to a beginner with your content, and that's not your client base. Your client base are not beginners. So we need to turn this ship around and start putting out content that your clients really appreciate and really would admire. So that's why I wanted to have you on the show, Bob, because before we go any further, I just want to let everybody know right now that I want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you have questions, throw them in the comments. There's no stupid question here. Bob and I will field them, and we want to make this as interactive as possible. One of the things that I realized after kind of reviewing my past content and seeing what people actually really liked, it was the live streams where I interacted with everybody versus the live streams where I just said my piece and took off, right? So I want to make this as interactive as possible. So please, we invite the conversation, because I know this is in your mind, and Bob and I are here to help any which way we can. So Bob, before we get started, just please share with the audience a little bit about your background, some of the projects you've worked on, and how you've been able to take this fear of niching down and actually 5x your business with it?
Well, I mean, I have a super diverse professional background. I attended several colleges, but graduated from none of them, right? And so that's, that's a particular antecedent for my story, and that's to get it out there to people who are thinking that you need a specific credit or accreditation or educational level or whatever in order to address yourself to certain specific markets. You don't. What you need is the valuable thing that is going to solve their problem. And that can come from anywhere, So I just like to get that out of the way first, because I like it to be an anchoring point that's encouraging for folks. I started out working in the theater. I was going to school for political science, growing up in Rhode Island, fully intended to become a corrupt politician, which is a very honorable sort of career path in Rhode Island. And then in the midst of college, well, Rhode Island's kind of an offshoot of Jersey. Henry, you understand this, right?
Absolutely.
So, but in the midst of that, just almost randomly, I got a summer job at a theater in Providence, Trinity Repertory. Just me looking to make some extra cash. Didn't have some higher aspiration to go into that, but I was hooked. The second I walked in that building, the second that I started working, as it turned out, I got a job on the lighting crew at the theater. Everything changed for me. I was like, oh, this is what I want to do, much to my parents' horror, but that's what happened. And I followed that career path, and I kind of worked my way up in the entertainment industry, first as a lighting technician, eventually moved to New York City, did a whole bunch of touring with Broadway musicals, at first in a sort of non-union, not big shows, but then I did work my way up to eventually working on Broadway, on the crews, constantly moving up the chain too, of responsibility and roles. Eventually worked on Broadway on Beauty and the Beast when it first opened in New York. Went out on tour with Beauty, and then I made another big jump, which was very unusual in the world of theater. I made the jump from being on the lighting crew to becoming a lighting designer, which typically is constrained to folks who have been through an MFA program. But I made this jump, and then I moved up from there from lighting designer to I began to be fascinated with the implementation of video in shows. So I worked my way into that, became a video designer, started expanding the practice out past Broadway and musicals and doing operas, doing brand activations, which became a really big deal and is to this day, doing concert touring, found my way into broadcast. And in particular, as video, as a production element, became like the key language for most live presentations or live events. I found myself being asked to direct. So I moved up again from the designer point to the director point, and then into producing, which is the next big step as you kind of ascend that. So that was what I was doing personally. My wife and I founded the company in 1997, and we founded Mode Studios principally to accomplish video design for these kind of things, concert tours, broadcast stuff. But we were super generalist. It was like, you got something you need a video design for? It didn't matter what it was. Theater, musical, opera, a contest show on television, a random healthcare conference, so like anybody that showed up to the door, we would work for, because we were really, really, we wanted to work, and we wanted to leverage the company, and we wanted to build this thing. And we were just, to be honest, completely random. Being in that position, operating in that kind of container, it doesn't allow for specificity, right? Yeah. I think now we're getting to the meat of the matter, which was in trying to be every answer to anybody that showed up, we were actually nobody's answer, because we were 1,000,000 miles wide and 1 inch deep, right? So we had these problems like, one of the big signals to us was we didn't have repeat clients. They wouldn't come back after the first time. And we'd wonder why. We were like, well, we delivered a pretty good thing to them. And, and as we kind of began to get above it and outside of it, we could see that there was something fundamentally wrong with our process. We weren't bringing enough value to the clients. We weren't able to talk in the language that they talked in. We were not able to understand their needs as well as we might in order to deliver effective design that solved their problems. And this was because we were trying to be every answer to every problem for everybody, right? And so we just couldn't go deep enough to do that. And I think it took that realization, basically it took a few big sort of points in the arc of the company. One of them being the recession in 2009. Several other sort of, where if you go into a cataclysmic, beyond your control business impact situation like that, and you don't have really strong fundamentals under you, your company will shatter and blow apart. And ours did. Being 1 million miles wide and 1 inch deep meant that the wind just blew us away, right? So we didn't have a gig for 1.5 years. And it's kind of amazing that we came out the other side of it. And that was when it started to change for us. We came out the other side of it. A few things happened. We had to lean way up. When we went into the recession, we had 60 people on payroll, offices in New York, Santa Monica, Seattle. We were trying to vertically integrate to be the answer to any production problem you would show up with. So the recession hit. We went back to me and Colleen in the basement with nobody, right? We leaned way up. And we came out of it with a few takeaways. A, we could not be the solution to every problem. It didn't work. B, we should not be trying to service everybody. What might happen if we could really determine who is what we, this set of skills and talents and the passions we have and the things we were interested in, how could we combine those things powerfully and then determine who might that be for, right? Who might our product and services really, really be for? Who might really benefit from them? Who could we work with who we had a really good understanding of what their needs were? And we realized that as a company, we don't want to be the answer to every problem. We had found a really good solution to staying lean, right? Coming out of 2009, it was great to not have going to bed at night and wondering how you're going to keep things going so you can feed 60 families. That's a hard thing, So we came out of it and said, we're going to keep it super tight. We're basically going to have the principal creatives. We'll build back up a little bit, but it'll be principal creatives, project managers and producers. Everybody else will subcontract. That became our model, right? And that's how we are to this day. We've kept it super lean. We do have people again in New York and in California and here, but instead of 60, we have about 10, right? And we decided we're not going to be the answer to anybody with a production problem. In entertainment, we don't do concert touring anymore, right? As glamorous and cool and sort of shiny and sparkly as that sounds, the margins are awful. The clients are not reliable, and it's not their fault. I'm not implying they're bad people, but they're people in a situation where it's very hard to constrain them, right? So from a business practice standpoint, that puts us at risk. So we said, okay, no more concert tours. What we did was we had been working in 3 big verticals, brand stuff, corporate shows, if you will, entertainment, everything, right? And then we had found accidentally a practice in architecture where people who were building big buildings wanted a big spectacle in their lobbies, some big flashy, shiny thing. So we had sort of accidentally found our way into that, and it was driving a lot of revenue. And again, it had kind of blown out. We're like, okay, well, we can do stuff in people's atriums. We started getting calls. Could we put something special in very high-end homes, right? Which is a very different market within that very different considerations, kind of like the entertainment clients now, where, these are individuals, often high net worth individuals, who are not very good at being constrained and can lead to lots of weird, business psychology going on. So we said, okay, here's the deal. In entertainment, we focus solely on broadcast and institutional entertainment providers. So think theme parks, cruise ships, and the networks. And in broadcast, we only do two things: award shows, so stuff like the American Country Music Awards, the Billboard Awards, the Emmys, that kind of stuff. And we do contest shows. So America's Got Talent, American Idol, The Voice. We would work on those things, and those things only in entertainment. In brand activation, we decided we can't service all these companies. We don't have enough expertise in their marketplaces to be really effective for them. But we had built a pretty substantial practice in certain segments. So we said, okay, from going forward, we are only going to work with retail consumer device companies, specifically digital devices, and automotive, because we had a deep, long relationship that had developed with General Motors. That had blown out past General Motors. We ended up working with Fiat Chrysler as well, and with Ford, and with Toyota. So we're in brand activation. We are only going to work with automotive clients and digital consumer product clients. And in architecture, we are only going to work with big brands who are building sort of brand headquarters buildings, and we are only going to work in situations where they are requesting big interactive media-driven features in their atriums. And everything else, we joyfully say no. And oftentimes that will come with a referral. We would say, we're not the right size or the right fit for this project. We think it sounds amazing. We know some people who could really help you, and we make the referral and we move on. No is the most powerful word in business.
Yeah, it is.
We say no every time, and I don't want to get metaphysical about it, Henry, but every time we say no, like some other thing happens that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Isn't it crazy? And listen, you could get metaphysical. I love metaphysics. I love the law of attraction. I love that stuff. I'm fascinated by it. I want to get into some of the problems that people face when they're trying to niche down as an industry influencer. And I want to come up with some solutions for them as well before we run out of time. But before we get into that, this quick little message. All right, guys, so let's dive into some of the problems that people experience when trying to niche down. So there's a few here that I have over here on my notes that I want to share with you. Listen, niching down is a scary thing. FOMO is a scary thing. The fear of missing out is a scary thing, okay? A lot of times we might think, well, what if we niche down in the wrong vertical? What's going to happen then? How much time am I going to waste? How much money am I going to waste? Okay, we got solutions for this. So don't get too upset. Don't let your emotions make you do different things for different reasons and have them be the wrong ones. So it's just slow down because we have solutions for you, okay? You might be scared of raising your prices now that you've become this niche, right? I'll give you a quick example. I had a client who was in the game 20 years. She was a coach in a specific sport. And she's doing it 20 years, getting paid $200 an hour, and she had zero time whatsoever. She had a family, she had a son, and barely saw them because her calendar was super booked and she couldn't see them. And at the end of the day, she's like, where the hell is all this money going? It's going right back out the door because it's not enough. Right. And so what we did was we rebranded her and had her focus on a very specific type of audience. She 10x'd her fees. She went from $200 to $2,000. And she was so afraid because she's like, nobody's going to pay this, Henry. I'm like, the clients that you serve now won't pay it. But wait until I show you the other clients that will pay it. And boom, now she works with half the amount of clients and she's 10x'd her business. So there is hope, guys. All right. So don't let that negativity, don't let that fear get the best of you. You may also be thinking that you're cutting off access to other profitable work. Like Bob said, the chances are that may be a reality, but is it the right work? I heard Jonathan Stark say something in a podcast not too long ago. He said, 1/3 of your clients are actually costing you more money than what they're worth. And I go, Jonathan, you hit the nail on the head, my friend. And that really opened my eyes. I said, dude, let me look at, who I'm serving and who are my favorite clients. And let's find more of them, because you never know. Right. And then there's a couple more. You mentioned it before, Bob. You said the fear of saying no, and potentially leaving money on the table. And then the other one is, well, what if I niche down, Henry, and I get bored because it's the same type of person over and over and over again. So if any of this is resonating with you guys, let me know in the comments. Let me know if this is, if you've ever felt these emotions before, because they're real. And people go through them all the time. So even I went through this. I had a client a long time ago say, Henry, you should be the guy for personal branding. Like when people think personal branding, they should automatically think Henry Kaminski. This was like 3-4 years ago. And I was like, oh my God, what a light bulb went off, right? And then I fell for it. I said, well, these types of clients, they're not going to be able to afford me. So I got to go for bigger business and this and that. Right? Little did I know that there are plenty of industry influencers out there that have the pocketbook to spend, want to spend it on themselves in this fashion. And so I had to, again, turn that bus around. It took some time, but I was able to turn it around. And now a majority of my clients are all industry influencers or somebody of stature that's been in the game for a while and wants to take it to the next level. And so these are some of the things. They're real. We have to face them. And this is why I'm doing this live today, is because I want to give you some solution. So Bob and I were talking offline yesterday when we were prepping for this a little bit. And we talked about some of the solutions that we could potentially serve you guys today and get you some help. So the first thing that I want Bob and I to kind of break down together is this one-liner right here. Every buyer wants to buy products that are made just for them. So Bob, I wanted to get your take on this because I see you shaking your head over there like,
Yeah, I mean, this is a power tool, right? And we can connect this. We can circle this back to this concern about, well, am I not limiting income potential, right? By niching down, by restricting opportunity to specific kinds of opportunity and not welcoming the other opportunity, am I not turning away income? But the deal is the income potential for an expert is orders of magnitude higher than the income potential for a service provider. Right? So when you're entering a conversation as an expert, when you are showing up and you know not only the pain points of your client, but why they have those pain points and why the marketplace antecedents have led them to a place where they are. And you can look not just into their processes or their, their work, but you can say, look, let's look at the marketplace, and you can talk with authority and confidence about their marketplace and about why these fundamental things can add up to this, which means if they just move their offering by that much, you've solved the big issue, right? When you show up as an expert, your rate is automatically much, much higher, right? And the thing to understand about niching is it's not a prison sentence. You're not going to self-select a room that you lock yourself in. This is an organic process, right? You're going to move your niche as you find it. You're going to learn more and more. You might end up niching even tighter as you find specific needs within a market vertical that you have the assets and the knowledge to really thoroughly and comprehensively solve. And they, so that's the other thing to understand about niching. It's not like you build the box and that's it, right? That box is going to shift.
Yeah, it's going to evolve. It's going to adapt, and this is why I believe that my business fared pretty well through this whole pandemic, is because right around June, Bob, I had like $92,000 month in business, and I think it was because a lot of people finally said, "Okay, this pandemic is real. I'm not going to sit around and let this thing take and steamroll me. I'm going to get out there and brand myself and put and have at it." And I think it was perfect timing too, because the pandemic hit around March. So March, April, May, everybody's sort of like, oh, what is this going to thing? Is this thing going to be around for a while? And then, like I mentioned yesterday, I said, some people bunkered down and some people said, no, we're going. And they did. And I think June was that month. And we were like, wow, let's go. We got work to do, right? And we just hammered at it. But it was these people that were saying to themselves, like, what I'm doing right now isn't working. So we need to shift. We need to go and focus on a different niche. Jason Linett is a perfect example. He came in, he's got this hypnosis business that's kind of running itself. And he was like, I am ready to shift segments because this thing is just a well-oiled machine. So I need a brand that's going to be forward facing to these folks that are really going to resonate with these folks. And bam, within 90 days, we had him launched and he was rocking and rolling in that new space. So that's one. Every buyer wants to buy products that are just made for them. The second thing that I want to share with you is this. Specific services are bought by clients with specific problems. And Bob sort of touched on this earlier when he said we weren't focusing in on those problems well enough. So nobody, I don't know what kind of content you were putting out, Bob, but here's what I've been told. Henry, your content is not compelling. And that was like a woof. I had to that was like a Tyson blow for me, because I'm like, I put all this content out. How can you tell me it's not compelling, right? And they were like, it's not, because it's not really focused in on one specific person. When people listen or watch you, they're not saying this guy's for me, because he's not focusing in on the problems that I have, right? And then I dialed it in. So I'll give you a quick example. I had a client, he runs a $20 million operation, okay? When you looked at him online, he looked Mickey Mouse. And he come to me and he said, Henry, you would never know, looking at my online presence, that we run a $20 million operation here. And I have so many other businesses that nobody knows about, but you would have no clue. And that's why he reached out and he said, I need a brand that truly represents who I am and for a very specific niche. And so we got to work. So you have to really focus in on those specific problems, right? What does an industry influencer suffer with? What keeps them up at night? Bob, what would you say an industry influencer struggles with on a daily?
An industry influencer struggles with that on a daily. The influencer implies expertise. It implies that they have valuable knowledge to share. So for them, a big pain point is keeping up, forecasting, seeing what's next, understanding how they're going to place themselves in that what's next to continue influencing, right? And this is like, and servicing a client like that, right, demands expertise. Going to what you're saying, people who are looking for a specific answer and have a specific problem, you can't answer that question if you're a generalist.
That's right.
You can't answer that question if you're outside their niche. You might almost accidentally bring some random perspective to it that came from something else. But that's rolling on the odds tables, and that's not what they need, right? By being specifically niched, I am an expert in automotive marketing. I am an expert in communicating to consumers about digital devices that they may want, right? Because we have niched so hardcore, I've built up a huge volume of knowledge in these things. So when my clients come to me with a specific ask, for instance, if I'm working with an influencer in automotive, and they say, and they come to me and they ask, Bob, I need to produce content that's going to generate immediate heat around what's next. I can say, well, we know that EVs and electric vehicles are super white hot now. And I can tell you that what is white hot within that is the fact that Panasonic and General Motors are currently working on graphene battery technology that's going to allow them to charge the batteries in under 12 minutes and have a range of 700 miles. Boom, he's off to the races. I've solved his problems. I knew exactly the nugget he needed to take and generate 100 hours of new content that I could advise them on, right? I would not have known that if I weren't so tightly niched. By being niched, you cast yourself as an expert. Now, and you have to do the work of that, right? Like a good part of my day, every day, is education and finding this kind of information that's going to be valuable to my clients. It's going to lend context to their processes and their products, and it's going to make me a valuable player at the table. But I can't do that for everybody. Nobody can, And when you can show up with that, when you have niched so tightly that you can now, because you're not trying to do a lot of work for a lot of different people, you can do the work of building valuable knowledge for a specific client who is going to come to you looking for a specific thing, and you're going to have it ready.
That's it.
Because you have said no a bunch of times to other things that doesn't fit inside that container. And instead, you've spent the time building your own value in that container. And when that client shows up, and by the way, you're also able, from a business development standpoint, you already know who that client is. You already know, because you know the niche so well. You know exactly who you're going to go after next and try to draw into your business and demonstrate your value and make yourself visible to them. It's not like you're going to throw a net in the water and hope a fish swims into it. You see the fish and you're going after that one. So I'm very much in the model of, I'd rather spend $1,000 of marketing money on one prospect that I already know has a high probability of conversion and to whom I understand I can add enormous value, than spend $1,000 trying to get 1,000 prospects.
You said something before, Bob, that leads me into this next point, right? Specializing demonstrates your skill at solving the certain problem, which I don't know if you guys ever realized this, but yes, you're serving and providing value to that person, but what is it doing for you? It's building confidence in what it is that you do. And when I don't know about you guys, but when I'm working off of a full tank of confidence, I could take on the world.
I hear so many people express nervousness or apprehension about the pitch or the discovery process, right, with a client, or, and showing up in that space, that psychological space, that workspace, and worried about their confidence. When you're walking into that room and know everything there is to know about that space and that client, because you've now spent very focused surgical energy developing that prospect, turning them into a client. You already understand before you begin the conversation about their pain points with them, what their pain points are, because you've looked at their behavior in the marketplace. This allows you to show up in that room with a foundation of confidence. You don't walk in going, oh God, I hope I know enough about making hot air balloons to add value to this guy. Because it's like, a random client has showed up. Now you're talking to somebody and you know their business, and you know how to help them. And so that part is set.
That's it.
Now you can lean into curiosity.
And that's what's going to open up a ton of doors for you. Exactly. So I want to get this out, but my ears and my eyes are doing a lot more work these days than my mouth. And that's what's helping me serve my clients at a higher level, is because before I try to advise, I need to hear and see what's going on. There was something I ran across. It was a post or something. And it said that Tony Robbins, before he makes any sort of suggestion to a potential client, like in his mastery program or anything at that high level there where you're working with him one-on-one, he'll ask upwards of 160 questions before he actually advises or suggests something to you, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I could see why he's so good at what he does. I'm not a huge fan of Tony, but listen, the guy's doing something right. Look at him, right? So, but the point is, you need to really understand the person. And this is which leads me to my next point, is identifying who you serve, coming up with the offers that they want, prioritizing your what's around what's most valuable to them, differentiating yourself, estimating the size and the scope of your chosen market, and reorienting your market to fit your new niche. So these are huge things. We do a lot of this work inside of the Brand Accelerator program. This is not something that Bob and I could do on a live stream, and give it to you in such a where you could just take it and run. But I just want to give you some of the high level stuff now to get your mind thinking in this direction, because when you start to think in this direction, you're going to naturally start to narrow, which is going to be good. Okay, so I want to get into some visualization here before we wrap up, because I know Bob's got something at the top of the hour, and so do I. So imagine being able to pinpoint specific problems that speak straight to your ideal clients. Okay, you start attracting specific crowds of people who resonate with those things. And that's where you're going to win, guys, right? I'll lead with that problem, who identifies with past clients of yours, because they're on your website, they see testimony, they see case study, they see you working with clients, and they immediately connect with that client. That client has the same problem that I have right now, and look at Henry helping them. This is the power of niching. When you start to work with multiple people with the same problem, people are like, he's the go-to guy. Just like Bob's the go-to guy in his world now, which is fantastic. So it's about 2 inches wide, 3 miles deep, like Bob said earlier. But that is going to be much more attractive to somebody than, yeah, we take care of this, we take care of that, and whatever problem you may have, we'll figure it out. We got you. No, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Being a generalist is actually limiting you. to doing great work. And so there was this quote that I want to share with you guys before we wrap up, and I'm going to ask Bob to say some last words. Seth Godin said, I don't know where, but I'm a huge fan of Seth, but he said, no niche is too small if it's yours. No niche is too small if it's yours. And so I'm going to leave with that. But Bob, any last, I know we covered a lot. We said we're going to keep it at 30 minutes, but we went over a little bit.
Yeah, we got it scripted, right?
Yeah, I could talk to you all day. So Bob, any parting words for our clients, for our listeners that may have this fear of niching down, and especially if they're trying to build up this influence in a specific niche?
Well, first I'll say this, right? You just delivered some gold when you said we're not going to solve this stuff here in this session, right? So the first thing I'd like to encourage anybody watching this to do is consider engaging with Henry in his Brand Accelerator program, because this is the journey he's going to take you on, the identification of this, right? The niches. Understand also that niching is a thing that applies to a marketplace, a service or offering, right, as well. So niching happens in different places in your business, right? Like, for instance, speaking about Tony Robbins would seem to be a generalist, right? His big audiences seem to come from everywhere. But Tony has one very, very specific pain point he solves for: fear of change. That's it. That's what Tony Robbins does. Everything he does, every program he markets, every session he does, every meeting he produces, it is all about those people bumping up against fear of change. And he has exactly the right leverage to move people past that moment of paralyzing fear into a state of welcoming change. That's his niche, right? So your niche might be a marketplace. It might be a specific problem, or it might be a specific good or service that you offer that nobody else offers with the specificity and the power that you offer it. And if you can start to pile these things, like if you can pile a specific service, good or service that works to solve a specific problem in a specific marketplace, you've got like the triple niche thing happening. This is how our revenues, like before we niched, like let's look at like 2011 and 12, we were just sub $1 million a year. Of that $1 million a year, we were netting like, oh God, it was like 940,000. Like we were netting like 60 grand on $1 million revenue, right? It was just awful, right? So as we started to niche, a few things happened. Colleen, who's the founder and the CEO, said, next year we're doubling our rates. And the year after that, we're going to double them again, right? So we set that in stone. We set in stone our plan to focus on these parts of the marketplaces that I described before, right? And in the years between 2012 and 2015, we 5x'd our revenues. We went from about $1 million a year to just sub $5 million a year. And suddenly our margins had increased to the point where, on $4.5 million of revenue, we're banking 2.5, right? So that's awesome. What came from that specificity. That's what came from saying no.
Oh, Bob, what a way to end it. Dude, that is awesome. That is awesome. And I just want to say something. I meant to say it before, but I forgot. I want to just thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your experience as an entrepreneur and using examples of your own business. There's a lot of people out there that will use other examples because they don't want to show that vulnerability. And I'm so happy that there's transparency out there like yourself, still putting out great wisdom. And this is why I love you, dude, because when we first met, you kept it real and you always told me how it was. with the good, the bad, the ugly. And that's something that I really, really want you to pay attention to, because it's what makes you magnetic. It really does. It really does.
Well, generously sharing my knowledge, that's another thing that people, they cling to the fear of, like, I don't want to give away my special sauce. Nobody's going to play your game as well as you play it. It's your game, right? Be generous, be transparent, and be of service, I mean, I love to give back in this way, Henry. It's like there's a parable about this guy in a hole, and a doctor walks by, and the guy says, please, can you help me? I'm in the hole. And the doctor writes a prescription and tosses it in. And a priest walks by, and the guy goes, I'm in the hole, help me. And the priest says, a rosary for him, and then moves along. And then his buddy comes along, and he says, help me, I'm in the hole. And his buddy jumps in the hole. And the guy goes, you idiot, now we're both in the hole. And his buddy says, no, wait, dude, I've been in this hole. I know how to get out of here. Let's go.
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. I've been diving in
a lot of holes, dude.
That's right. Same here. But you're so far down the turnpike than I am. That's why I love learning from you and listening to you, because you've persevered, and now you have that story to tell. And that's why I wanted you here today, because I could only be of so much value to these folks, right? And then you get somebody like yourself that has the experience, the wisdom, the understanding that I don't. And that's why I always love collaboration. I always love bringing people on that are more experienced than me, because I learn. I'm always going to learn, and I'm going to teach my son the same thing. Like, if you're in the room and you know it all, then you're in the wrong freaking room. So, but Bob Proctor said something in one of his, I'm listening to his audio right now. You Were Born Rich. It's like an OG, like, right? It's old school, right? But I love this stuff, right? And I love Bob, 86 years old, still going out strong, right? He said something that really grabbed me, and he said it so fast. I'm like, oh, I'm happy I grabbed that. But he said, you cannot give without receiving. And some people could say you're full of shit. That's not true. But if you think about it deeply and believe that, for me, it's 100% true. I cannot give without receiving. It's the law of the universe. We're talking about this before, right? When you give, there will be receipt. You just don't know when, what, how, from who, where, but it's coming. So when you just remember that, when you're the reason why you're not getting what you want in life right now, maybe you have to take a step back and say, well, what am I putting out? So we'll leave with that, guys. Have an amazing day. Bob, I didn't mean to leave you 9 minutes before your next call, but
oh, it's all good. I love this stuff. This is what makes me happy, right? This is being able to help people, talking with people about this stuff. This is my passion. So anytime, Henry, thank you so much for inviting me. It was such a blast.
It was great catching up. It's been a couple months, but I'm happy to see that you're faring well and that you're doing well. And thank you again for coming on and again, sharing your wisdom and transparency and your authenticity.
My pleasure.
That's